In this session, we're going to talk about the art, and I would even say the science, of the negotiation in purchasing. The two main concepts in this half of the lecture have to do with what is the purpose of a negotiation, and then what is the process. Like anything in business, there's a process related to the negotiation. So we're going to talk about how to plan for that and set us up to win. Where this fits in the objectives of purchasing is pretty clear. If we don't have good contracts with our suppliers where we actually discuss the terms and come to an agreement, we won't have continuity of supply, and more than likely won't even have alignment with our organization. Now, when we talk about any sort of process, there's always room for improvement. So in managing the negotiation, and the process of sitting in front of a supplier and working through points in the contract that you're hoping to come to, an agreement, it needs to be managed effectively and efficiently. There are lots of ways in which negotiations can suck up a lot of time within your organization and a lot of energy. Let's look at ways to where we can improve that and make it as efficient and effective as possible. So let's start with the definition first. What do we mean by negotiate? Well, negotiation is nothing new. It's been around for centuries, if not ages, since the dawn of time. It's a discussion, and it has to be mutual. And I'm going to drive this point home multiple times. It cannot be one-sided. Mutual discussion on the arrangement of terms. Now, I jokingly say to my kids, especially my youngest, who refuses to put his shoes on, repeatedly, every day. And I say things like, I will not negotiate on this. And what I mean by that is this is not a mutual conversation when we're trying to come to an agreement on what needs to get done. There has been an action levied. We need to get that done. It's not, we're not discussing it further. Once we have a breakdown that it's no longer a mutual conversation, we no longer have a negotiation. It's a one-sided argument at best. And the intent, the hope, and the purpose of a negotiation is to reach a mutual agreement. At any given point in time, if either party says, "No, I don't think we're going to come to an agreement," and truly believes it, or stops communicating, or loses hope in the fact that the negotiation is supposed to bring the parties together in agreement, then we no longer have a negotiation. So those are the main elements. And how I describe that even further is to have a good foundation in the negotiation process. Here's a triangle. To have a nice, good foundation of that triangle, you need to have two things. You need to know exactly what you want. What do you want from your company? What is your company's position in this discussion? Everything down to what parts am I trying to buy? What are the specifications? What are the terms of service? You need to know exactly what you want. Then you need to do your research. You need to figure out what they want. The other party, your supplier for that matter. Find out what they want, what makes them tick. Are they looking for profit margin? Are they looking to grow their business with your company? Are they looking to price gouge you so that you will find some other supplier and get out of the contract that you already have in play? Are they even not that interested? These are things you need to know. The reason why you need to know what you want and what they want is by having that solid foundation of research and understanding internally. You can then have a mutual conversation in the pinnacle of that conversation. The pinnacle of this triangle as well is step 3, and that is proposing actions that may work. Now, many of us have been through this negotiation in our life. You and your friend or you and your loved one are sitting in the car and you need to find out someplace to go to dinner. Well, you may or may not really know what you want, but you need to figure it out pretty quick. Because chances are the other person isn't going to know what they want. So you may already know them well enough to be able to figure out what they like and don't like. So know exactly what you want, or for that matter, don't want. Guess what they would want or don't want based on past history, and propose options. Otherwise, you sit there as a stalemate in the driveway, staring at each other, going, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. And meanwhile, getting hungrier and hungrier and frustrated. That's not a mutual conversation when everyone's standing around saying, I don't know. Instead, by proposing actions, you'll actually have something to discuss. And I use that silly example that is relatable because that's sometimes what business negotiations look like. Well, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Or there's somebody that comes around and says, this is what we're doing, and pushes over the other team because they've done their research. Don't be bullied into a contract because you're not prepared. So, how do we prepare this? Well, part of what we need to do is understand, again, what we identify or anticipate as a purchasing requirement. Then we need to determine if the negotiation is even required. Sometimes we don't even need to negotiate. It's just a simple proposal and acceptance. So identify or anticipate what you need. Try and, not like you have to read their mind, but give them enough information to where they can make an informed quotation, proposal, or offer. And then from there, either accept or counteroffer. And go from there. You may not even need to enter a negotiation, but should you need to, it's time to plan. The planning part is what we're going to talk about. That's the process. Then we're going to go through the conducting the negotiation itself. And then the last thing, which we get to talk about next week, which is the execution of the agreement. Not only the drafting, but what does it look like in play? So going through the planning. First, figure out the objectives. Sorting out what you want, what your company wants. Maybe not what you personally want, but what the company wants. Start with a vision to work towards. Even starting this can help in the negotiation process later on when you actually conduct the negotiation. This is what we're hoping to gain out of it. Now, we may not want to tell the supplier everything that we're hoping to gain out of it, but hopefully part of that vision is a mutual agreed upon contract that benefits both organizations. It's a nice, clean vision, right? It's a win-win. Now, we can prioritize things. And I've done this activity multiple times with different groups of people. So we'll have the purchasing folks come in and we're like, what do we have to have? What are the must-haves? And then what are the would like to have? And then, of course, there's the negative Nellies. We have the we don't want, that column as well. And then I bring in people from all other aspects of the business. Quality, engineering, manufacturing, receiving, shipping, whatever team touches the product or deals with it at some level. And have them do the same thing. You're going to find out there's a lot of commonalities. Things like, we want our boxes to be clearly labeled with our part number and everything on them. Yeah, receiving needs to know that. Manufacturing needs to know that. Accounting wants that because it's easier to receive. And purchasing wants that because we don't have to constantly be asked, what is this? Engineering also wants it because they want revision control, and so does quality. Simple must-have. We go through the must-haves, like these are the necessary things, absolutely necessary. Without them, our business would not run. And then the would like to haves. These are the things that we usually get wrapped around the pole in negotiations. And they could be things like, it would be nice if we could have deliveries every other day. It would be nice if we could do a price reduction every 6 months. It would be nice if you fill in the blank. Right? So before either party even comes to the table, we know we need to negotiate. Let's do our research on ourselves first. That one half of the foundation of the negotiation triangle. Then we need to analyze things. We need to figure out what strengths and weaknesses our supplier has compared to our own. Things like, do they have more purchasing power? Do they have more leverage when it comes to price? Do they provide a specialized product that we can't get anywhere else? Are they skilled negotiators? Sometimes you know who you're going to be going up against or talking to in a negotiation because you've done business with them over the years. You know that they're really shy and quiet. They're more likely not to speak. Are they demonstrative? Do they have a bully in the negotiation process? Things like that. You need to understand their strengths and weaknesses, not only from a business perspective, but from their negotiation skills, if you can find that out compared to your own. Now, where can we find this? Well, experience, yes, but research. You can talk to other people that have done business with them. You could also go see what they say about themselves. You can go see their track record. You know, LinkedIn is a powerful thing. I wouldn't say cyber stalk your supplier, but if you can, in stealth mode. Figure out a little bit what they say. Have they been taking classes on negotiation? Maybe you should too. Things like that. And then understand what power does in the role. And I talked about leverage and influence. Those are all aspects of power. In the last slide of this presentation, we're going to dig in that a little bit deeper. Once we analyze the situation, measure ourselves up, and get some data, then we start to figure out a little bit more about the company that we're going to be negotiating with, period. What are they in financial crisis? What are their goals? Do they have growth initiatives? If they're publicly traded, they're probably published online. If not, you can find trade journals, other experience talking to local suppliers, word on the street. Do your same kind of research like you would do during the sourcing process. Now, if this is a new supplier, you probably already just did your supplier evaluation survey or sent your quality people out there. You've got a good understanding how their business runs. That's a good thing. So use that information. Gather that all up. Then figure out, what do they need? Why do I care what they need? Well, it's bargaining. If you have empathy and understanding for whom you are working with and negotiating with, you're more likely to be effective. Now, one of the tactics we're going to talk about later is creating a win-win situation. This recognizing the needs in others and looking to fulfill those needs at the same time as yours is called a win-win. What it also helps you do is create a culture of care. So instead of doing those, typical movie or television show scenarios of negotiation where you into stalemate and there's a lot of anger and tension, you can enter a situation negotiation where the mutual parties feel like they're trying to benefit each other, that they're trying to work this out for the benefit of the good for each other, not one person wins or loses. And as a result, the supplier understands you actually care about their business and their success, and they're more apt to work with you as part of that strategy. Also try to figure out what their requirements are, if you can, recognizing that they too need to make money, that they too need to operate in a business, and that you're not their only customer. Now, that may not be true all the time. Sometimes you are their only customer. But either way, set it on an equal platform. Then, as you start to talk to people and you start to evaluate things, you're going to bring in a cross-functional group again, and let's look at the facts. And what I call this is sorting through the fog. And fog is an acronym for facts, opinions, and guesses. In a negotiation process, opinions and guesses have no place on the table, only facts. Sometimes the facts are brutal enough and you really don't need anything else. What I mean by that is, I would get talked to all the time. This supplier is terrible. They're always late. Well, I am always wary of those always statements because it's opinions and guesses. Unless they have data to back it up, it's not a fact. Whereas going into negotiation saying, listen, the on-time delivery for your company is less than 50%. That speaks to reality. Now, there may be factors in there like, well, you keep changing the dates on your orders. That's why we're always late. Now we have a room for discussion and understanding. If you're going to quote facts, numbers, and figures, you better know where the data came from and you better be ready to present it. Back up your facts. Once you present a fact and you're unable to back it up, all other facts, no matter if you have the evidence or not, become subject to interpretation. Issues should be discussed. Okay? Issues are things that, like soft things, like soft skill related. When I email you, you don't email me back, or there's a lack of communication in this area. You could give facts about, oh, I sent this email on this date and you didn't reply in this time. You could do that. But issues of communication, for example, can be discussed as an issue, and proposals and how to solve it. Guesses have no place at all. It's annoying, it reduces your credibility, and it speaks to emotion. The more you can strip emotion out of a negotiation, emotion of the side of anger or empathy or over empathy or pity, the better it's going to and smoother it's going to go. Even though we are humans and emotion will play a factor, try and eliminate it by sticking to the facts. Then figure out your position. This is all before you hit the table. This is all about what way are we going to tackle this conversation with this supplier. And we're going to talk about tactics in a minute in the next presentation. But it's establishing your position on a specific issue or issues. This is what we think needs to get done. These are alternatives on what we think needs to get done to fix this. Then have options. Going into negotiation without options is like going into the car dealership and not understanding what your budget is. Now, never tell a car dealer, a car salesman, what your budget is, because they'll sell you a car right at that budget. But you need to know. You need to know what you're comfortable with on a low end or a high end when it comes to the price in that case. There should also be predefined reasons for getting out of the original position. There were many times in a supplier negotiation, my partner and I would plan it out, and unfortunately we'd play roles like good cop, bad cop, or tough guy, nice guy. Either way, we had a rhythm and a reason for why we did things, but we had a predetermined agreement. If a supplier said certain phrases or was going down a certain path, for example, we're in a pricing negotiation and we were pushing the pricing down, meaning we wanted lower costs, they wanted to increase the cost, we're willing to meet in the middle, but we didn't tell them that. We were working on that, and if the supplier at any given point in time said, well, if we don't come to this agreement, we're going to end up stop shipping to you, which we cannot have, we would then go through another route, and we would go through, okay, well, what if we did a phased approach to the price increase? And then we would concede a little bit. What we had those predefined kind of like kill words, or we called them kill words in negotiations, to where it was understood that if these certain things happened, we were going to change course, and everyone at the table was on the same page before we got in there. So there wasn't shock, there wasn't confusion on our end. We had our act together. So get your position in line, and your strategy is next. So once you get your strategy, this is your overall approach to the discussion. Where is it going to be? What are we going to do? We're going to have the location picked, and we're going to pick the appropriate location for multiple reasons. We'll talk about this in tactics. And we're going to define and communicate the depth and scope of the discussion so that we prevent it from going crazy and sideways. I call it chasing squirrels. We had one negotiation that it seemed like all we did was just chase issues and facts and guesses all over the place, and it was just ridiculous. So we said from that point on, we will, from the beginning, write down on the board or have it projected what our vision is, what the scope is, what the depth is, and set the strategy from there. And both parties will know. That's where that came from. Then, prior to the meeting of the actual negotiation, get the entire team that's going to be there together, even some stakeholders, explain to them your position, your strategy, how you're going to go about it, what are the major issues you're going to discuss, what are the participants in the negotiation, basically the rundown. It's not practice time, it's just to get everyone on the same page, so there's no surprises. Or if things do go sideways, they will know quickly, because you already know what the issues are, what the negotiations are, and so on. So we were going through some pricing negotiations with a number of our suppliers at one point, and one of these, we did the negotiation briefing. We had everyone in the room. It was a raw material supplier for our plastic resins, and we knew that the representative was a little bit of a loose cannon. I mean, he would sometimes send emails. You're just like, did he even read that? Does he realize we're his customer? Things like that, a little bit aggressive at times. So we're preparing for battle in a sense with this negotiation. We still want to do business with them. We just needed to negotiate some new terms and pricing. And so we got everyone in the room, we discussed our process, and we covered the major issues. This is our internal team. We haven't met with the supplier yet. We go into the negotiation and we were completely unprepared with what was next. So we had practiced, we had reviewed the facts and the data, we had shared the information, we even did mock negotiations, my partner and I, because we just were prepared for battle. We took notes, we modified some things, rebriefed the team, moved on. So timeline-wise, we were in it a few hours with this guy. At the end of it, what ended up happening was the guy walked in, slams the door dramatically, and was like, I don't know why we're here. I'm giving you the best price. Do I need to call my lawyer? So he wants to lawyer up immediately. Well, my partner thankfully had a good relationship with the guy and was like, well, let's break this down. Why do you want to call your lawyer? Well, he thought that we were sharing his information with his competitors, which we were not. But he thought that. So we had to dig through, why do you think that? So we spent about 2 hours really talking him down off the roof, as we called it, because he came in a super high emotional approach, and we were able to talk him down with facts. At the end of it, we did get our price reduction. He did get to keep the business. He wasn't all that happy with this at first, but he was happy to have the business overall. So even though we practiced, strategized, we were not prepared for that. We were not prepared for that at all, but we were able to work as a team because we had practiced multiple times how to negotiate together, and we knew how each other worked. So sometimes things go sideways. It will be okay. One important thing I want to talk to you about before we wrap up this section is about power. Power is real. I used to have a boss who used to say, oh no, I think everyone's pretty much equal. Well, she was wrong. There is power in negotiation. There is power in business relationships. There's power in all types of relationships. If you get 2 or more people in a room, there's power. It is a real thing. And when we talk about it, there's different types of power. And when we list them out here on the next slide, you'll see what I mean. But sometimes power isn't even real. It's perceived. And that's what we call a mind trip. And I think we've all experienced mind trips in our day. Some would even say that magic can be a mind trip. Well, that's not the kind we're talking about here. So power comes from different sources. You can have information power. If you do your process of planning, as I just mentioned, gathering information, you've got some power behind you because you've got information to back it up. There's reward, the power of rewards. Well, if you do these things for me, then I'll give you a reward. You're going to try and reward these businesses with contracts that make them money. You can hold a bargaining chip there. Now, if they don't want that, or your business isn't all that important to them, that power may not be all that strong. Then you've got coercive power, which we want to avoid at all costs in a negotiation. The thing, well, if you don't do it this way, then this is what's going to happen. It's a negative connotation to things. There's legitimate power, meaning you have the roles and responsibility of a legitimate authority. Government has legitimate authority at this time. Police have legitimate authority. You also have expert power. You ever watch trials or anything like that? Oh, we brought in a fingerprint expert. He's got experiential power. So what happens is sometimes, I've seen tons of crime shows in my day, forensic shows were not the fake ones, the real ones. And they're talking about how an expert came in and gave a testimony that was false. Well, people believed him because they're an expert. That's called expert power. So sometimes what we do in negotiation, not to get too much into tactics, but since I've got a few degrees in supply chain, certifications, sometimes we'd play that up and be like, here's our expert in this. Now, would I consider myself an expert? In some areas, maybe. But it was really done to leverage the power of knowledge and information and understanding. Then you have referent power. Referent power is a little harder to pin down, but it is like someone that sits at the head of the table. Even though they may not have legitimate leadership, they have referential power. As an example. It's a little weak one, but there's more examples in your text of these sources of power. So in this section, we cover things like the purpose of negotiation, the definition, and then the process. The biggest part of this is the planning. Now we're not talking months and years of negotiation planning unless it's necessary. But generally speaking, based on the importance of the contract that you're trying to negotiate, you should put a fair amount of planning in. And as you get more experience in it, it will become more effective and efficient. All right, in the next section, we are going to talk about the tactics in negotiation.